The fluorescent lights of the office hummed their monotonous tune, a soundtrack to the daily grind. I, Daniel, champion of the spreadsheet, master of the coffee-fueled all-nighter, was just another cog in the corporate machine. My cubicle, a beige testament to conformity, was my domain, my prison, my personal purgatory. I wasn't unhappy, not exactly. Okay, maybe a little. But mostly, I was resigned. Resigned to the endless meetings, the pointless reports, the soul-crushing monotony of a job that felt as fulfilling as watching paint dry. But hey, at least it was stable, right? A steady paycheck, decent benefits, and the vague promise of a promotion that always seemed to dangle just out of reach. I'd been with the company for 5 years, a loyal soldier, a dedicated worker bee, always going the extra mile, always putting in the extra hours. And for what? A pat on the head? A good job, Daniel, that felt as empty as my coffee mug at 3 p.m.? The occasional pizza party that was more about boosting morale than recognizing actual achievements? My boss, Mr. Bradshaw, was a textbook tyrant, a man who seemed to derive pleasure from belittling his employees, his condescending remarks and public reprimands a daily ritual we all endured with gritted teeth and forced smiles. "Daniel," he'd boom across the office, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "that report is underwhelming. Did you even try?" Or my personal favorite, "Daniel, I need that presentation by EOD, and make it sparkle, unlike your personality." The man was a master of the backhanded compliment, the subtle insult, the public humiliation that left you feeling like a worthless insect under his perfectly polished shoe. But I endured. I smiled, I nodded, I apologized for my inadequacies. Because that's what you do, right? When you're just another cog in the machine, you keep your head down, you do your job, and you pray that one day someone will notice your efforts, your dedication, your unwavering loyalty. But that day never seemed to come. The promotion always went to someone else. The recognition always landed on someone else's desk. The attaboy always echoed in someone else's cubicle. And as I sat there, staring at my computer screen, the fluorescent lights casting a sickly yellow glow on my face, I couldn't help but wonder, was this it? Was this all there was? An endless cycle of mediocrity, punctuated by the occasional pizza party and the constant fear of Mr. Bradshaw's wrath? Little did I know, my life was about to change, dramatically. And it all started with a pink slip and a chance encounter with a ghost. It was a Friday afternoon, the kind where the clock seems to tick slower than usual, each second a torture as you anticipate the sweet release of the weekend. I was just wrapping up a particularly tedious report, the kind that involved more formatting than actual analysis, when Mr. Bradshaw's booming voice echoed across the office. "Daniel, my office, now!" My stomach did a nervous flip-flop. Mr. Bradshaw's summons were rarely a good omen. They usually involve some variation of, "Your performance is subpar," "This report is unacceptable," or, "I'm deeply disappointed in your lack of initiative." I plastered on my best "I'm completely competent and not about to have a panic attack" smile, and headed towards his office, the sterile, glass-walled box that symbolized his power and my insignificance. "Close the door, Daniel," he said, his voice a chilling blend of authority and disdain. I did as I was told, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Daniel," he began, leaning back in his leather chair, his fingers steepled in front of him, "we need to talk about your future with the company." The blood drained from my face. Future? With the company? Those weren't words I usually associated with Mr. Bradshaw's pronouncements. Those were words that usually preceded a promotion, a raise, a recognition of my tireless efforts and unwavering loyalty. But the look in his eyes, the smug smirk playing on his lips, told a different story. "Effective immediately," he continued, his voice devoid of any emotion. "Your services are no longer required." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of me. Fired? After 5 years of dedication, of late nights, of weekends sacrificed at the altar of corporate productivity? Fired? "But why?" I stammered, my voice a pathetic croak. "Why?" he repeated, his smirk widening. "Let's just say, we're going in a different direction. A direction that doesn't involve you." He slid a manila envelope across the desk, the stark white paper inside a death sentence to my career, my stability, my carefully constructed world. "This contains your final paycheck and information about your severance package," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I suggest you familiarize yourself with it. And Daniel." He paused, his eyes boring into mine, the cruelty in their depths making my stomach churn. "Don't let the door hit you on the way out." I stumbled out of his office, the envelope clutched in my hand, my mind reeling, my body numb. Fired, just like that. No explanation, no warning, no second chance. Just a casual dismissal, a cruel reminder that I was nothing but a disposable cog in the corporate machine. The walk back to my cubicle was a blur. I gathered my meager belongings, a framed photo of Julia, ironic considering she'd dumped me for being too safe, a half-dead succulent, a coffee mug with a chipped rim, and shoved them into a cardboard box. As I walked out of the office, the whispers followed me, the curious glances, the barely concealed smirks. I was a failure, a reject, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones around the water cooler. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like an eternity. Each floor a descent into a deeper circle of despair, each ping of the elevator a nail hammered into the coffin of my career. By the time I reached the street, the sun had set, the city lights a mocking reminder of the life I was losing. I stood there for a moment, the cardboard box heavy in my arms, the weight of my failure crushing me. Fired, broke, alone. The words echoed in my head, a cruel mantra that seemed to define my existence. I was lost, adrift in a sea of despair, with no land in sight. And as I walked towards the bus stop, the city lights blurring into a kaleidoscope of hopelessness, I couldn't help but wonder, was this it? Was this the end of my story? The days that followed the firing were a blur of gray, the kind of gray that seeps into your bones, chilling you from the inside out. My once structured routine dissolved into a shapeless void. No more alarm clock jolting me awake, no more hurried commute, no more fluorescent-lit cubicle to call my own. Instead, there was the couch, my new office, my dining table, my therapist's chair. The cushions bore the imprint of my despair, a testament to the countless hours spent staring at the ceiling, replaying the events that had led to my downfall. The initial shock of the firing gave way to a gnawing anxiety. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter, their red lettering mocking my dwindling bank account. Job applications sent out into the void, returned with the same generic rejection emails, each one a tiny paper cut to my already wounded ego. The isolation was suffocating. Friends, once eager to grab a beer after work, now seemed distant, their invitations dwindling as my unemployment stretched from weeks into months. Their "keep your chin up" and "something will turn up" pep talks felt hollow, empty platitudes that did little to soothe the growing sense of despair. I tried to keep busy. I cleaned the apartment with a fervor bordering on obsessive, scrubbing floors, organizing cupboards, rearranging furniture in a futile attempt to impose some order on the chaos of my life. I even started cooking, following elaborate recipes with a meticulousness that would have impressed my old accounting colleagues. But the emptiness always returned. The silence of the apartment was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the building or the distant siren wailing a mournful tune. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. The nights a battlefield of insomnia and nightmares, my subconscious replaying the humiliation of the firing in vivid, agonizing detail. The mirror became my enemy, reflecting a stranger I barely recognized. The once confident, ambitious Daniel was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed, unshaven ghost haunting the remnants of his former life. The financial worries gnawed at me, a constant, insidious pressure that threatened to crush me. Savings dwindled, credit card debt mounted, and the eviction notices started appearing under my door, their red lettering a stark reminder of my impending homelessness. Hope, once a flickering flame, dwindled to a faint ember, threatening to be extinguished by the relentless winds of despair. I was lost, adrift in a sea of uncertainty, my future a dark, uncharted territory. And as I sat there, on my worn-out couch, the city lights casting long, lonely shadows across the room, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the end? Had I reached the bottom of the spiral, the point of no return? Was there any way out of this darkness, any chance of finding my way back to the light? The rain was coming down in sheets, mirroring the torrent of despair inside me. I was soaked, hungry, and seriously considering the merits of dumpster diving for dinner. Rejection email number 37 had just landed in my inbox, a digital slap in the face reminding me of my worthlessness. Worthless, I muttered to myself, slumping onto a park bench, the cold metal seeping through my threadbare coat. Useless, disposable. That's a rather harsh self-assessment. Wouldn't you say? A voice said, smooth and deep with a hint of amusement. I jumped, nearly falling off the bench. Who said that? I stammered, looking around wildly. The park was deserted, the only other occupants a couple of stray dogs huddled under a dripping tree. Over here, old boy, the voice said, and I finally noticed him. Or rather, it. A figure, shimmering slightly in the rain, seated on the bench beside me. A man, impeccably dressed in a pinstripe suit, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. A man who was translucent. Am I hallucinating? I mumbled, rubbing my eyes. Is this what rock bottom looks like? Conversations with imaginary friends? Hallucinating? Hardly, the figure said, his smile widening. I assure you, I'm quite real. Or as real as a ghost can be, I suppose. A ghost? Seriously? This had to be a stress-induced delusion, a figment of my caffeine-deprived imagination. Look, I said, trying to sound rational. I appreciate the company, but I think I need to get going. Maybe find a therapist, or a priest. Nonsense, the ghost said, waving a dismissive hand. You're perfectly sane, just unlucky. Until now, that is. He leaned closer, his eyes, a piercing blue that seemed to see right through me, locking on to mine. Allow me to introduce myself, he said, his voice a low rumble that somehow commanded attention. Victor Hale, at your service? The name sent a shiver down my spine. Victor Hale. The legendary billionaire CEO, the ruthless business mogul. The man who had built a corporate empire from scratch. The man who had mysteriously died a few years ago, his death shrouded in rumors and conspiracy theories. Victor Hale? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. But you're dead. Indeed, he said, his smile taking on a macabre edge. A minor inconvenience, I assure you, but one that presents us with a unique opportunity. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I'm looking for someone, Daniel. Someone ambitious, someone driven, someone who has been wronged, someone who wants revenge. He paused, letting the words hang in the air, the rain drumming a steady beat on the pavement. I can teach you everything I know, Daniel. The secrets of the business world, the art of manipulation, the power of wealth. And when I'm done, you won't just get your job back. You'll own the whole damn company. I stared at him, my mind reeling, my heart pounding. A ghost offering me power, wealth, revenge? It was insane, impossible, and yet a tiny spark of hope ignited within me, a flicker of defiance in the face of despair. Why me? I asked, my voice barely audible above the rain. Because you have potential, Daniel, Victor said, his eyes boring into mine. And because you have nothing left to lose. He was right. I had nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. All right, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. I'm in. What do I have to do? Victor Hale, the ghost of a billionaire, smirked, a glint of approval in his spectral eyes. Excellent choice, Daniel. You won't regret this. And so began my apprenticeship with a ghost. It was Unconventional, to say the least. My once empty apartment became a makeshift classroom, the walls plastered with charts, graphs, and diagrams that seemed to materialize out of thin air. Victor, unable to physically interact with the world, would gesture, his spectral hands sweeping across the figures, explaining complex financial concepts with a clarity that would have put any business school professor to shame. He started with the basics: finance, accounting, market analysis. But his lessons went beyond textbooks and spreadsheets. He taught me to read people, to see through their facades, to identify their weaknesses and exploit their vulnerabilities. "The key to success, Daniel," he'd say, his voice a ghostly whisper that somehow filled the room, "is understanding human nature. Greed, fear, ambition. These are the levers that move the world." He showed me how to analyze body language, to interpret micro-expressions, to decipher the hidden meanings behind every word, every gesture. He taught me the art of persuasion, the power of influence, the subtle tactics that could sway opinions, close deals, and build empires. But there was more to his teachings than just psychology and strategy. There was a supernatural element. He seemed to have an uncanny ability to predict market trends, to anticipate competitor moves, to see opportunities where others saw only risk. How do you know that?" I'd ask, bewildered, as he predicted a sudden surge in a particular stock, a prediction that would prove eerily accurate just hours later. "Intuition, Daniel," he'd say with a cryptic smile, "a lifetime of experience, and a few ghostly perks." He showed me how to read the energy of a company, to sense the undercurrents of the market, to tap into a collective consciousness that seemed to exist beyond the realm of the physical. It was like learning to see the world through a different lens, a lens that revealed hidden patterns, secret connections, and opportunities that were invisible to the ordinary eye. The training was intense, relentless. We'd spend hours each day, Victor's voice a constant presence in my ear, guiding me, pushing me, challenging me to think differently, to see the world through the eyes of a ruthless, ambitious CEO. And slowly, I started to change. The doubt and despair that had consumed me began to fade, replaced by a growing confidence, a sense of purpose, a hunger for success that burned brighter with each passing day. I was no longer just Daniel, the fired accountant, the victim of corporate injustice. I was becoming something more, something powerful. And as I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I saw a glint of steel in my eyes, a determination that mirrored the ghostly gaze of my mentor. The journey was just beginning, but I knew, with a certainty that ran deeper than any spreadsheet or financial report, that I was on the right path. The path to revenge, to redemption, to a future where I would not only reclaim my life, but also build an empire that would rival even Victor Hale's own. "Forget the textbooks, Daniel," Victor's voice echoed through my small apartment, his spectral form pacing restlessly. "Those teach you the rules. I'm going to teach you how to break them." My initial lessons in finance and accounting were just the foundation. Victor was building me into something different, something more than just a number cruncher. He was molding me into a weapon, a force to be reckoned with in the cutthroat world of corporate warfare. "The boardroom is a battlefield, Daniel," he'd say, his ghostly eyes gleaming with a predatory intensity. "And to win, you need to be one step ahead, anticipate your opponent's every move, see through their lies, and exploit their weaknesses." He taught me to read people like open books, not just their body language, but their motivations, their fears, their hidden desires. He showed me how to analyze their past decisions, their social connections, even their online footprint, to build a psychological profile that revealed their vulnerabilities. "Everyone has a weakness, Daniel," he'd say, his voice a chilling whisper. "Find it, exploit it, and use it to your advantage." He introduced me to the concept of shadow play, the art of manipulating events from behind the scenes, of influencing decisions without leaving a trace. He showed me how to plant rumors, leak information, and orchestrate events that would benefit me while appearing to be mere coincidence. "The best moves are the ones no one sees coming," he'd explain, a ghostly smirk playing on his lips. The whispers in the corridors of power, the subtle shifts in the market, the seemingly insignificant decisions that can have a ripple effect across the entire industry. He taught me to anticipate competitor moves, not just by analyzing their past actions, but by understanding their mindset, their fears, their ambitions. He showed me how to think like the enemy, to see the world through their eyes, to anticipate their strategies and counter them before they even knew they were being played. "The battlefield is not just the boardroom, Daniel," he'd say, his voice echoing through my mind. "It's the marketplace, the media, the public consciousness. Control the narrative, and you control the game." He showed me how to use the media to my advantage, to shape public perception, to build my own image while subtly undermining my opponents. He taught me the power of social media, of online influence, of manipulating the digital landscape to create the reality I desired. And then there were the other lessons, the ones that bordered on the supernatural. Victor, with his ghostly perspective, seemed to have access to information that was beyond the reach of any living person. He could sense shifts in the market before they happened, predict the rise and fall of companies with uncanny accuracy, and even tap into the thoughts and intentions of his rivals. How do you do that?" I'd ask, bewildered by his seemingly impossible knowledge. "A ghost has his advantages, Daniel," he'd say with a cryptic smile. "But you can learn to see these things too. It's about intuition, about trusting your gut, about tapping into the collective consciousness that connects us all." He taught me to meditate, to quiet my mind, to listen to the whispers of the universe, the subtle cues that hinted at future trends, hidden opportunities, and the vulnerabilities of my opponents. He showed me how to use my dreams, my subconscious, as a tool for insight and prediction. The training was intense, demanding, pushing me to the limits of my mental and emotional capacity. But with each lesson, with each new skill I acquired, I felt myself changing, evolving into something more than just a corporate drone. I was becoming a strategist, a manipulator, a master of the game. And as I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I saw a new Daniel staring back at me. A Daniel with a steely glint in his eyes, a confident smirk on his lips, and a ruthless ambition burning in his heart. The old Daniel, the one who had been fired, humiliated, and discarded, was gone. In his place was a new Daniel, a force to be reckoned with, a man who was ready to take on the world and win. My tiny apartment, once a symbol of my financial struggles, was now my command center. The walls, still covered in Victor's cryptic charts and diagrams, now also sported a state-of-the-art computer setup, multiple monitors displaying a dizzying array of stock tickers, market trends, and financial news feeds. Gone were the days of ramen noodles and budget beers. My fridge was stocked with gourmet groceries, my cupboards filled with exotic teas and artisanal coffee beans. I even hired a cleaning lady, a luxury that felt both decadent and strangely necessary, given my newfound focus on world domination. Or at least corporate domination. But the real change wasn't in my apartment or my lifestyle. It was in my bank account. Victor's lessons, his uncanny ability to predict market shifts and identify undervalued assets were paying off. My initial investments, once cautious and tentative, were now bold and strategic, fueled by a confidence that bordered on arrogance. I was no longer just playing the stock market. I was manipulating it. Victor had taught me how to identify the subtle cues, the whispers in the financial winds that hinted at upcoming trends, mergers, and acquisitions. I was buying low, selling high, and watching my portfolio grow at a rate that would have made my old accounting colleagues faint. Remember those eviction notices? Yeah, those were a distant memory. I'd paid off my debts, built a healthy emergency fund, and was now investing in real estate, art, and even a few promising startups, thanks to Victor's insider tips, of course. The contrast between my previous financial struggles and my newfound wealth was jarring. I used to stress over a $10 overdraft fee. Now I was casually discussing million-dollar investments with my financial advisor, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Maria who clearly didn't believe my ghost mentor story but appreciated my knack for picking winners. The best part? The freedom. The freedom to make choices without worrying about the cost, the freedom to pursue opportunities that were once out of reach, the freedom to tell Mr. Bradshaw and the entire corporate world exactly where they could shove their performance reviews and team-building exercises. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the power to shape my own destiny, to control my own narrative, to make a real impact on the world. Victor had taught me that money was just a tool, a means to an end. The real goal was influence, the ability to make things happen, to change the game, to build a legacy that would last long after I was gone. And I was just getting started. With Victor's guidance, I was building a network of contacts, a web of influence that stretched across industries, across continents, across the very fabric of the business world. I was attending exclusive events, rubbing shoulders with CEOs, politicians, and even the occasional celebrity, who, let's be honest, were just as clueless about finance as I used to be. The old Daniel, the timid, insecure accountant, was a distant memory. In his place was a new Daniel, a confident, ambitious investor, a man who was not afraid to take risks, to challenge the status quo, to play the game by his own rules. And as I watched the numbers on my screen climb higher, as I felt the thrill of another successful deal, I couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning of my empire, my legacy, my revenge. And with Victor by my side, whispering his ghostly advice in my ear, I knew that nothing could stop me. Okay, so having a ghost as a business coach definitely has its perks. Victor wasn't just whispering stock tips. He was giving me a masterclass in corporate Machiavelli. The guy practically invented the term hostile takeover in the afterlife. Remember those subtle cues and whispers in the financial winds I mentioned? Yeah, those were basically insider trading, but with a ghostly twist. Victor could sense the undercurrents of the market, the anxieties of CEOs, the desperation of failing companies. It was like having a cheat code for the stock market. But it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the game, the thrill of the deal, the satisfaction of outmaneuvering my opponents, the feeling of power that surged through me with every successful move. Take, for example, the whole Henderson Pharmaceutical situation. Their stock was plummeting, rumors of a failed drug trial swirling through the market. Everyone was selling, panic in their eyes. But Victor, with his ghostly insight, knew something they didn't. The rumors were exaggerated, a deliberate leak by a rival company trying to snatch up Henderson on the cheap. "Bye, Daniel," Victor had whispered, his voice a chilling echo in my ear. "Buy while they're panicking, and then watch the fireworks." I did as I was told, ignoring the raised eyebrows of my financial advisor. Maria was starting to think I had a serious gambling problem. And sure enough, a week later, Henderson announced a new partnership, a groundbreaking deal that sent their stock skyrocketing. I sold at the peak, raking in a profit that would have made my old salary look like pocket change. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the message. The message to my rivals, to the corporate world, that I was a force to be reckoned with. A player who couldn't be underestimated. Victor taught me the art of the power play. The carefully timed leak to the press, the anonymous tip to a competitor's board member, the strategic alliance that shifted the balance of power in my favor. It was a game of chess, and I was playing with pieces no one else could see. My network grew exponentially. CEOs, politicians, even the occasional celebrity, who, let's be honest, were mostly just looking for investment advice, flocked to my side, drawn to my success, my charisma, and the undeniable aura of power that Victor had helped me cultivate. I was invited to exclusive events, private dinners, and backroom meetings where deals were made, fortunes were won and lost, and the future of entire industries was decided. I was no longer just an observer. I was a participant, a player in the game, a man whose opinions mattered, whose decisions had consequences. But with the power came a darkness, a ruthlessness that I hadn't known I possessed. Victor's lessons weren't just about strategy and manipulation. They were about exploiting weaknesses, crushing rivals, and leaving no room for sentimentality. I remember the first time I deliberately sabotaged a competitor's deal, a move that sent their stock plummeting and cost them millions. I felt a twinge of guilt, a fleeting moment of hesitation. But Victor's voice, cold and calculating, quickly silenced those doubts. "Sentimentality is weakness, Daniel," he'd said, his ghostly eyes burning into mine. "In this world, there are winners and losers, and you have to decide which one you want to be." I chose to be a winner, and with each victory, with each power play, the darkness within me grew stronger, the line between ambition and ruthlessness blurring. I was no longer just playing the game, I was changing it. And as I looked out at the city lights from my penthouse apartment, a glass of expensive whiskey in my hand, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the man Victor had intended me to become? Or was I becoming something more? Something that even he hadn't anticipated? Okay, so Operation Takeover Bradshaw Industries was officially a go. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making a statement. A big, bold "I told you so" to the man who had fired me, humiliated me, and underestimated me. Bradshaw Industries, my former corporate prison, was now my target. And I wasn't just going to get my old job back. I was going to own the whole damn thing. Victor, naturally, was thrilled. "Finally, Daniel," he'd said, his ghostly grin wide. "The ultimate power play, the perfect revenge." The plan was intricate, a carefully orchestrated dance of financial maneuvering, strategic alliances, and good old-fashioned corporate espionage. It wasn't going to be easy. Bradshaw was a powerful man, with deep pockets and connections that stretched across the industry. But I had something he didn't: a ghost for a mentor and a burning desire for vengeance. The first step was acquiring shares, quietly, discreetly, through shell corporations and anonymous brokers. I began buying up Bradshaw Industries stock. It was like playing a high-stakes poker game, keeping my cards close to my chest, bluffing when necessary, and waiting for the right moment to make my move. Victor's ghostly insights were invaluable. He knew the weaknesses of Bradshaw's board members, their financial vulnerabilities, their personal indiscretions. He whispered suggestions in my ear, hinting at which alliances to forge, which rumors to spread, which levers to pull to influence the balance of power. I started cultivating relationships with key players within the company, subtly planting seeds of doubt about Bradshaw's leadership, highlighting his arrogance, his mismanagement, his dwindling profits. I became the concerned colleague, the loyal employee who just wanted what was best for the company, all while secretly plotting its demise. The media, as always, was a powerful tool. I leaked carefully crafted stories about Bradshaw's questionable business practices, his lavish lifestyle, his mistreatment of employees. The public perception of him began to shift, the once respected CEO now seen as a greedy, out-of-touch tyrant. Bradshaw, oblivious to the storm brewing around him, continued his reign of terror, his arrogance blinding him to the danger I posed. He still saw me as the safe and predictable Daniel, the pushover he had so easily dismissed. He had no idea that I had transformed, that I was now a force to be reckoned with, a man who was playing him at his own game. The crucial moment came during the company's annual shareholder meeting. I had amassed enough shares to have a significant voice, enough influence to sway the vote. The meeting was a tense affair, the air thick with anticipation. Bradshaw, confident in his control, strutted onto the stage, his smug smile radiating arrogance. He gave his usual speech, touting the company's success, which was, let's be honest, mostly due to my efforts before he fired me, and outlining his vision for the future. The shareholders, many of whom I had personally cultivated relationships with, listened politely, their smiles strained, their eyes calculating. Then, it was my turn. I stood up, my voice calm and steady, my presence commanding. I laid out the facts, the financial discrepancies, the ethical violations, the mismanagement that had been hidden for so long. I painted a clear picture of Bradshaw's incompetence, his greed, his abuse of power. The room erupted in murmurs, whispers, and gasps. Bradshaw's face paled, his smug smile replaced by a look of panic. He tried to interrupt, to defend himself, but his words were drowned out by the rising tide of dissent. The vote was swift, decisive. Bradshaw was out. I was in. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who had fired me, humiliated me, and underestimated me was now reporting to me. The company that had rejected me was now mine. As I stood there, in front of the stunned shareholders, the newly appointed CEO of Bradshaw Industries, I couldn't help but smile. The game was won. The revenge was complete. And the real fun was just beginning. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. Taking over Bradshaw Industries was pretty damn satisfying. Seeing the shock on Bradshaw's face when the board voted him out? Priceless. But firing him? That was just the beginning. Victor had taught me that true power wasn't just about reaching the top. It was about making sure your enemies stayed at the bottom. Revenge is a dish best served cold, Daniel, he'd said, his ghostly voice echoing with a chilling satisfaction. And you, my boy, are about to serve a 5-course meal. First course, public humiliation. I made sure the news of Bradshaw's ousting was splashed across every business publication, every gossip column, every social media platform. His reputation, once his most valuable asset, was now tarnished, irrevocably stained with the mark of failure. Second course, financial ruin. I meticulously dissected his finances, exposing his shady investments, his hidden debts, his questionable tax returns. The authorities, alerted by a series of anonymous tips, courtesy of yours truly, launched an investigation, freezing his assets, seizing his properties, and leaving him with nothing but a mountain of legal bills and a tarnished reputation. Third course, isolation. I made sure his former colleagues, the ones who had once fawned over him, now shunned him. His invitations to exclusive events dried up, his phone calls went unanswered, his social circle evaporated like a puddle in the desert sun. He was a pariah, an outcast, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones in the corridors of power. Fourth course, the mansion. Oh, that beautiful mansion, with its sprawling lawns, its infinity pool, its ostentatious display of wealth. I bought it, of course, at a bargain price, thanks to Bradshaw's financial woes. And then I did something Victor would have been proud of. I turned it into a homeless shelter. The ultimate insult, the ultimate symbol of his downfall. Fifth course, the career killer. I made sure Bradshaw would never work in the business world again. His reputation was in tatters, his network destroyed, his credibility shattered. No reputable company would touch him with a 10-foot pole. He was finished, a relic of a bygone era, a cautionary tale for aspiring CEOs who dared to underestimate their employees. And me? I was thriving. Bradshaw Industries, under my leadership, was flourishing. Profits soared, innovation thrived, and employee morale reached an all-time high. No more surprise visits from a tyrannical boss, after all. I was the new king of the corporate jungle, a man who had clawed his way to the top, leaving a trail of vanquished rivals in his wake. The darkness that Victor had nurtured within me had blossomed, a potent force that fueled my ambition, my ruthlessness, my insatiable hunger for power. But there was a cost. The friends I had once cherished, the ones who had supported me through my darkest days, now seemed distant, their laughter strained, their eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and apprehension. They saw the change in me, the steely glint, the ruthless determination, the shadow of Victor Hale that seemed to linger around me. Even Maria, my financial advisor, the woman who had once admired my audacity, now looked at me with a cautious respect, her questions about my unconventional strategies laced with a hint of unease. And Olivia, with her fiery spirit and unwavering ambition, saw the darkness too. But unlike the others, she wasn't afraid of it. She embraced it, challenged it, even fueled it in her own way. We were a power couple, a force to be reckoned with. Our combined ambition, a force that could reshape industries, topple empires, and rewrite the rules of the game. But as I stood at the top of my newly acquired skyscraper, the city lights spread out before me like a glittering tapestry of conquest. I couldn't help but wonder, was this the life I truly wanted? A life of power, wealth, and ruthless ambition? Or was there something more? Something that Victor, with all his ghostly wisdom, had failed to teach me? The answer, I knew, lay somewhere in the darkness, in the depths of my own soul. And as I looked out at the city that was now mine, I couldn't help but feel a shiver of anticipation. The game was far from over, and I was just getting started. The wind whipped at my face, the city lights a dizzying kaleidoscope below. I stood on the rooftop helipad of my new skyscraper, the crown jewel of my corporate empire, a monument to my ambition and Victor's tutelage. It was a far cry from the cramped apartment where this whole crazy journey had begun. "Impressive, isn't it?" a familiar voice said, smooth and deep with a hint of pride. I turned to see Victor Hale, his ghostly form shimmering in the moonlight, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. He looked different, more solid somehow, less transparent. "You've done well, Daniel," he said, his voice echoing with approval. "Exceeded my expectations, in fact. You've mastered the lessons, embraced the darkness, and built an empire that rivals my own." "Thanks to you, Victor," I said, raising my glass of top-shelf, naturally, whiskey in a mock toast. "Couldn't have done it without your unique perspective." He chuckled, a low rumble that seemed to reverberate through the night. "Indeed. But the true test, Daniel, is not in the acquisition of power, but in its maintenance. Can you hold on to the throne? Can you withstand the challenges, the betrayals, the constant struggle for dominance?" "Challenge accepted," I said, a smirk playing on my lips. "I've learned from the best, haven't I?" Victor's smile widened, a hint of something darker flickering in his eyes. "Indeed you have, Daniel. But remember, the game never ends. There will always be new rivals, new threats, new opportunities to seize or to lose." He paused, his gaze fixed on the city below, a predatory glint in his eyes. "And sometimes, Daniel," he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "the greatest threat comes from within." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Was he warning me, testing me, or was there something more? Something he wasn't saying? I met his gaze, my own eyes reflecting the city lights, a flicker of ambition, and something else. Something colder, harder. A ruthlessness that even Victor might not have anticipated. "Don't worry, Victor," I said, my voice smooth, confident. "I'm not afraid of the darkness. I embrace it." He nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. "I know you do, Daniel, and that is both your greatest strength and your greatest weakness." He faded then, his form dissolving into the night, leaving me alone on the rooftop, the wind whipping at my hair, the city lights a glittering testament to my triumph. Victor's words echoed in my mind, a lingering question mark hanging over my future. Had I truly learned his lessons? Or had I surpassed him, become something even more ruthless, more ambitious, more dangerous? I looked out at the city, my city, the empire I had built, the power I had amassed, and a wave of something washed over me. Not just satisfaction, not just pride, but a hunger, a thirst for more. More power, more influence, more control. The revenge, the downfall of Bradshaw, that was just the beginning. A stepping stone on a much longer journey. A journey that would take me to the very pinnacle of power, the very heart of the corporate world. And as I stood there on the rooftop of my empire, the wind whispering secrets in my ear, I couldn't help but smile. The game was far from over. The real challenges, the real battles, were yet to come. And I, Daniel, the once fired accountant, the protege of a ghost, was ready to play. The legacy of Victor Hale would live on, not just in the empire I had built, but in the darkness I had embraced, the ruthlessness I had cultivated, the ambition that burned within me like a fire. And as I raised my glass to the city below, a toast to my victory, a promise to my future, I knew that I was just getting started. The world was mine for the taking, and I wouldn't rest until I had it all.